Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World, episode 143. I'm your host, John Jordan, and joining me today we have Jack O'Halloran from SKALE Networks. How's it going, Jack?
Going great. Thanks for having me here today.
Good. We're saying going great because my internet's bad. So we're going to see how we get on today because we've had a few goes at this
All right. We'll have some fun.
Which is sort of ironic because I was just looking at the SKALE Network website and you say you're the world's fastest blockchain. So.
Well, we didn't say that until Dartmouth said it. Dartmouth Blockchain did an independent study. They worked with the core teams and developers and did actual on-chain live testing, and they said it. So now that they said it, we're like, all right, we'll say it too, because I think everyone said that and everyone markets a lot of these numbers, but they went and so if anyone cares, go read that study. There's even a white paper. So that's why we raise the flag proudly of fastest now.
There's always a bit of a. I mean, dangerous is the wrong word, but always it's interesting as marketing statements. You want it to be sort of third party testified to, but it's still. I mean, you obviously think there is. That's a good thing for you guys to be associated with.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just I think we've always been more conservative and not wanting to say things that aren't true, and which and I think some other projects are very similar as well. But it's nice when it's hard to break through the noise because there are a lot of people that just say things without the proof and evidence, and it's good to have a third party review, especially for gaming. I mean, we're talking about gaming today. Speed, if you're doing any sort of on-chain component to the gameplay, which I think is a requirement for to like really have a blockchain game. You can't just fake it and have something some NFTs minted in a single wallet and let people use a Web2 application. The chain should be interacting and participating, and you've got to have speed. You've got to have transaction throughput. You have to have low latency, time to finality. So those are important. End up being really valuable things for game developers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you probably won't remember because it's a long time ago. I had to check. So it did have you on the podcast previously when we were just an audio podcast. So in March 2020, episode 70, we did a podcast then, and I have to admit, maybe embarrassingly, the only thing I remember is elastic sidechains. That was my takeaway from the podcast.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier about how during that period, that was the COVID days, and I was just I was hiding out on a farm, like just trying to get my internet to work, and yeah, But hey, good to see you. It's always nice to have a face to the voice, as they say. And hey, it's also fun to be here because since 2020, SKALE's made a ton of progress, and it's been a big, ambitious project. And a lot of these things have come together and come to fruition. So excited to talk about what's happened, and as opposed to what is going to happen or what might happen.
Yeah. And I guess it's sort of funny because back then we didn't really talk. I mean, I don't know whether you. I don't know whether you think SKALE is an L2. I mean, I'm going to probably show my technical lack of technical knowledge here. But definitely back in that stage, we were talking about things like sidechains, and there were probably things like Loom Network back in the day, and sort of we've moved on since then, and now sort of L2s are the sort of the cutting edge really for where we are in sort of running sort of high performance applications on blockchains.
Yeah, and I think it's the landscape's growing even more than that. I think it's about horizontal scalability as opposed to just vertical scalability. And to unpack that for people, it's the vertical scaling world is you need to have like a really fast layer one blockchain, or you have something like Ethereum and you stack technology on top of it off chain. And horizontal scaling means you're actually adding more resources next to each other and you're trying to pool security around them. So SKALE, for example, has 20 different blockchains that all operate with one shared validator set. And hey, guess what? If these all start getting full, there could be a 21st chain and a 22nd, and it starts kind of stacking next to each other. And hey, these are also built vertically on top of Ethereum, and Ethereum adds a lot of security, but and so it's now become a very popular thing. And I think, you go listen to these elastic sidechain comments that we used to make. We don't even call SKALE a sidechain anymore, but people thought we were a bit nuts because we were the only ones really, and there was a couple others. I mean, Polkadot and Cosmos were also really trying to grow horizontally with lots of chains. But within the Ethereum ecosystem, we were the only ones with this vision. And it's a good thing when your competitors start, doing what you're doing. especially when you have a head start, is my feeling. So
Yeah.
I feel validated.
And then just for me to get my terminology right, you wouldn't say, or it's wrong to say Scale Networks is an L2. You see you are sort of more an L1 within the EVM world. Is
You
that
know,
correct
it
way of thinking?
also, and that's one of the challenges of scale, is it was designed to help, it was designed to be the most efficient scaling mechanism.
Mm,
It was designed to solve a problem. It wasn't designed in a groupthink dynamic to say, let's design under this framework and then everyone go operate in these guidelines and see what you can do. And we, Scale's built on Ethereum, and it applications usually launch tokens on Ethereum and then connect to
mm,
Scale. And so in a way, we're like a layer 2 plus. So we've got layer 1 security, we've got layer 1 blockchains that have layer 2, components and layer 2 functionality, and also some layer 2 security features. So in a way, it's a layer 2 plus. And it's got a lot of flexibility. We have some applications that saying, hey, everything's on Scale. We're still layer 1. We have other ones saying, let's build on Ethereum. Let's put our NFTs on Ethereum. Let's put our
mm,
core token on Ethereum, and then we're going to connect to Scale in a layer 2 environment. But I think the industry is maturing, and a lot of these nuances are kind of, people are realizing they don't matter. At the end of the day, can you
yeah.
help developers? Can you provide fast throughput? Can you provide cost-effective transactions? And are you secure?
Yeah, yeah. I was kind of laughing. I'm still trying to understand what L2s are, and everyone starts to. Well, the next thing's L3s, of course. It's all you go. Oh, at this point, we sort
Yeah.
of let's just give
I'll
up.
tell you, I'll give you like the most simple way to say it is, um, to be a dogmatic pure layer 2.
Mm,
It means you're not running a blockchain. You're
no.
basically running the software that runs on a blockchain, but you're running it usually like in an Amazon server, AWS or Google Cloud. And what you do at the end of the day is you post the results of those things back to the Ethereum mainnet every time.
Mm,
And so
mm,
there's always an affiliated cost. You're always going to be, usually it's 5 to 10 cents a transaction. Sometimes a pure layer 2 will have there was a time Arbitrum had a $4 transaction gas fee, and Ethereum's was $3 for the same thing because of the
mm,
congestion on Arbitrum. And, it's because so you gain security by posting everything back. Whereas Scale is not, it's running a consensus in that chain, and it's running really fast, and it doesn't post everything back because, it just doesn't make sense to you from a cost perspective. And we've had, last month we had 23 million transactions, something like that.
okay.
I can look here
Mm.
in a second. The month just ended. There were 22 million each of the prior months. And imagine if we were spending the dapps were spending 5 or 10 cents per transaction. It just would be,
Mm.
really, really not feasible. And
Yeah, yeah.
you find that on a lot of these other chains and L2s, it's not feasible. And without like really heavy subsidized grants to the big games to offset the gas fees, there's no way that they would pay for that.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And just another sort of data point that you've just had your 1 millionth active wallet as well. So that again, that's
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's so go back 3 years ago, the network had not launched yet,
yeah,
and we had big goals and ambitions. And it was really June 2022 where I think prior to June 2022, there were less than a million transactions total in the network. There were probably less than 10,000 active wallets, and that's just a year and not even a
yeah.
year and a half ago. We've now had 1.6 million active wallets, so we passed a million, and it keeps growing fast. There's been 645,000 active wallets in the last 30 days. 22 last month there were 21.4 million transactions, and we've had 162 million transactions total, and since June of 2022. So
Mm.
there's a lot happening. It's nice to and hey, hats off to the developers and the game builders and the people doing growth and community growth at our partners. They really we built our community built, and our developers and open source contributors built some really amazing technology, but the ball's in the hands of the game players and the game devs now, and it's awesome to see them be successful.
And I guess it's sort of maybe ironic is the wrong word, but I'll say ironic that this sort of has happened during what we see as the crypto bear, certainly in terms of sort of market
Yeah.
values. But that's sort of underneath the surface, the sort of currents are moving in a different direction.
It's kind of interesting. You look at, you go to the DApp radar, you just look at the top chains, the first view, and it's all stacked ranked by number of dapps live. Without calling out any chain in particular, but a lot of these, like 90% or 85% of the dapps have zero active wallets. And so you see these people that are in the lead that have thousands of dapps, and there's just actually nothing happening. And Scale and also some other, chains and L2s are really making progress right now in the bear market. And I think at some point people wake up and say, oh, wow, like who's actually really producing, as opposed to who had the highest token value going into the bear market, and everyone kind of got beat up at the same ratio. So, for us, it's just, hey, like put hay in the barn now, deliver, and, maybe people will recognize that later. But it's really all you can do.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely from a sort of with a sort of game hat on, or a sort of entertainment sort of apps hat on. The fascinating thing is, crypto cycles always are sort of driven by speculation and maybe macro and all that sort of stuff. That's what we've seen, at least for the last cycle. Whereas this one, at least to me, that it seems the groundwork is that there are a whole bunch of these, whether you call them L2 chains or whatever, and they do have quite a lot of activity on, and they now, as in sort of the past, you get a lot of activity on Ethereum, and then it gets to a stage where no one could do anything on Ethereum. And the price kept going up because that was a speculative thing. Whereas now there's just like lots of stuff happening. The price isn't going up. That's, but at some point you kind of think if people were just doing stuff on these chains, there's no, as you say, very little cost to actually doing that anymore, which has been a big problem in the past. Then you actually have a sort of, you would hope, a stronger foundation for people realizing, or the community realizing that a lot of this stuff is happening now, and people are playing games or whatever they're doing. And it's a broader mass market appeal.
Yeah, totally. And if you look at like the bear case or the naysayers, devil's advocates view of blockchain gaming, blockchain gaming is the games aren't fun. It's expensive to do anything, use transactions. The user experience is difficult. You have to be an engineer to be able to use and play these things. And it's just slow. Like anything that happens on chain is slow. And literally all four of those things have been solved.
Yeah.
And it's just those criticisms were accurate and fair, but they're not anymore. And there's a lot of smart people who have been working on those problems. And I think kind of there was blockchain gaming, and then on the other end of the spectrum there was gaming, and now we're kind of seeing like the blockchain games really just look like games and feel like games and act like games, and and have custodial and non-custodial options and serve both parts of the market. So I think when these bear market shifts, it's not just because of macro. Like to your point, it's actually things are happening, and we're seeing things happen, and these are the breadcrumbs people piece together and say, oh well, like promises are being delivered, and so it's exciting. I think gaming is going to be the star of the next phase here.
So let's talk a bit more some specific titles here. So actually, one of the reasons that I wanted to get back on the podcast was, I guess 3 months ago, we've had this sort of game, Untitled Platformer, which is in and of itself as a game, it is a platformer, very sort of retro sort of design. It's sort of as you'd expect from sort of an indie game, a game that's called Untitled Platformer. It's a browser game. There's also a mobile version as well, and that's doing sort of really well. And that, I think for me, that was sort of a sort of signifier of, I know about SKALE Network, and now there's actually a game that, I think at one point was doing like 40,000 sort of daily active wallets, which is in the big scheme of things one of the larger games out there. So how's it been on the inside? Sort of because of the developers have to sign up to you, and you see this sort of stuff happening sort of months.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome where there's so now 5 of the top 25 games on the DApp radar ranking are on Scale, which is amazing to see. And for us, we see all of these builders. They come and they start building in the ecosystem. They start contributing. They start testing on testnet. They sign various agreements to say, hey, we're committed to build on Scale, and the foundation does stuff to partner with them and help them and co-market and work together. That's just how it works across all of these chains. And the execution's all decentralized, but there's always people, businesses, people working to help grow and partner together. And so we get to see the early indicators of what's happening. And you and I had a chat about this before, where these things, it's not a surprise to me because I've been seeing these people in testnet. I see these games coming, and there's a lot more coming. It's exciting. But then you get some real, like, I don't want to say surprise, but just kind of like, oh, wow. Like Untitled, this guy or the team there, just brilliant builder, right? And team. And they're, also building a lot of like Unity SDK stuff, no goal ambition to be a top game. Just like, hey, wanted to build like a really amazing game and make it really easy to use and play, and just wanted people to have fun. And it's just like seeing that, and all of a sudden, just like boom, the success. And it was that's like, it's awesome to see that, and that's how gaming works. You look at like the indie studios, and there's some darlings that come through, and everyone, it surprises everybody. And I think Untitled's one of those in our space.
Mm-hmm. Just a few other ones as well. I think another thing that's interesting, away from the specific title, is obviously I look at the blockchain game sector a lot, and I sort of follow a whole bunch of games, and none of these were on my radar, which maybe means that my radar is somewhat wonky or something. Or maybe you're picking up a different sort of developer, because you got your Ether Strike is currently, I think, your biggest game, doing about 170,000 active wallets over the last month. You got a Gamify, which is I think an Indian sort of cricket game, 200,000 over a month. Football game, five stars. I think that's how you pronounce it. So it's quite a range of games, and doing, as you say, some pretty big numbers in quite a short period of time. I think Ether Strike's only been out fairly recently. So.
Yeah, and it's the other thing. People are like, well, what is blockchain gaming? And I'm like, okay, well, you've got Gamify that's got over 1 million downloads on the Google Android store, and they just got pushed onto the iOS platform. That's a mobile game. You have Stray Shot just launched their public beta, and it's like unbelievable, first-person shooter, AAA style battle royale game, and you download and play, and it has all this like woven in, built-in on-chain activity. It's happening constantly, and there's a whole Web3 component with Web2 gameplay, and then you have like Untitled, which is a casual browser game, right? And so you cover a lot of these different areas, and Crypto Crusades is this like big RPG iOS game, and they still, I think they haven't really pushed marketing yet, but it's a great game that's on iOS. So you just get all these different categories like you do in traditional gaming, and blockchain is not this mutually exclusive thing from gaming and blockchain gaming or Web3, cryptocurrencies and NFTs. They're going to live across the different segments. We don't see it yet in any major way. Like you don't see, you're not on your Nintendo Switch and then like interacting with blockchain yet, or, your home, systems. But I think that's coming too, but that's going to take a lot of like buy-in from those groups. And I think we're probably still a ways off, but when they start losing market share, they're going to quickly adapt.
Mm-hmm. And have you sort of, as a Scale, have you sort of done anything specific to attract those sort of gamers? I often think we sort of most blockchains sort of, you kind of, you have your DeFi stuff, and they sort of have these sort of buckets of where you want to be. And there's not many, a few, but not many have really looked at to gaming, I don't think specifically. But I wonder, how you have been running this for, a number of years, how do you sort of see the market? Is presumably, Scale's not done anything specifically for gaming, but you seem to be picking up sort of gaming sort of clients, or is that something you focus on more, or do you want to have sort of a balance, or you don't want to sort of be maybe pigeonholed as being, a gaming blockchain?
The way we look at it, we are pigeonholed as we call them HPDs, high performance dapps. Okay. And if you look at Scale, you play, and I say pigeonholed kind of tongue in cheek, because I think it's going to be a huge growing category. The TAM's going to be massive for high performance applications or high performance dapps. And the thing is, Scale has chain fees, not gas fees. Okay. And so the unit economics, even if you're using a relayer and you're subsidizing gas fees on another chain, they just can't touch the unit economics. It's impossible to, the way you're paying for space, you're paying for compute resource that can run a blockchain up to a certain capacity on Scale. And it's just really difficult to compete with that. And so and the speed we talked about earlier, those qualities that come together make them, Scale very attractive for even non-games. Like Exord has a AI global intelligence, like crowd intelligence platform that to do predictions and, on sentiment, and really cool thing that's not gaming. But guess what? They need to process a lot of transactions every day. and they need low gas fees. Games that have any on-chain component need to process a lot of transactions. And so one, I think we just said, hey, this is our target. We got really focused around high performance dApps, and we went after that market and, did a lot of, the blocking and tackling and basics of the fundamentals of product marketing and sales and outreach. And, but then a lot of it is success breeds success. And you start, developers talk to developers, and this is all open source. So then there's people contributing, there's people, just going on, reading things, testing the code, and they don't even talk to us. And they come to us, hey, we're going to deploy on Scale. It's like, okay, great. Well, and a lot of times they don't even need our help. It's all EVM and there's some nuances. So it's just good to see that kind of flywheel start to operate. And that's how I think you get really scalable growth in a Web3 ecosystem.
Yeah. And I don't know how much you can say in terms of, you seeing who's sort of using Scale. Is there anything you can sort of point to in the future, or any sort of velocity you've got in terms of people kind of signed up and amount of sort of gaming product coming out?
Yeah, I mean, I can say without, I don't like to give this isn't any sort of guidance or advice on Scale. Just say that for compliance reasons, but
okay.
You can say, hey, there's a huge inflow of applications that are building, that are getting ready to go live, and all this, a lot of that's public. You can see who's over there in the Discord and the chat, talking, communicating. But we're excited to if we talked 3 months in June, maybe we had one of the top 10 or 15 blockchain games, and 2 of the top 50, and now we have 5 of the top 25. And I'm excited to see these upcoming launches, and just see more and more of those. And hey, I'd love to see half of the top 20 be on Scale. That'd be for what it really, a lot of it, the success is going to come down to also how well do these teams execute. We're giving them, I think, a great environment and a platform to execute, and I think there's some phenomenal builders building on Scale, but they've got to deliver, they've got to do their jobs well, and we're going to be there to help them. And but it's all about removing friction, I think, is the theme. Whether you're a developer building a game and you need to remove friction for the player, if you're a chain, you need to, or L2, you need to remove friction for the developer so they can actually create a good platform. And then, hey, you, even in this market, there's people playing every day. I was in Singapore at Token 2049. There are 10,000 people there. No one, if there's a bear market, people forgot to tell those 10,000 people, because they were there and they're more excited. Then, I went to a conference in the US a week later, and it was like probably 20% of the people that were there 2 years before.
No, definitely. No, there is definitely that. I think you've seen really sort of this year in particular, the sentiment with sort of North American and Western markets compared to Asian markets, which maybe Asian markets were sort of lagging a little bit in the sort of in 2020s. So they've got a bit of sort of catch up. But in terms of, certainly on the gaming side, there's sort of Koreans and the Japanese and some of the regulations around that. The Japanese government being very open and setting down laws in comparison to what's going on in the US, which is sort of the exact opposite. It's quite stark now, I think.
Yeah. And we're seeing a ton of growth in Southeast Asia and India and Pakistan for Scale. Not, we definitely we've signed up a lot of partners now in those areas, but also partners in Dubai and Singapore, that where the game developers are and the companies are that are know that there's just a huge set of people playing and just actively playing and also making a living. And a lot of these people, for blockchain gaming or traditional gaming, they're grinding, they're trying to make $1 to $2 a day. And, and then that is a big foundational piece of any game ecosystem and game economics. And then you have other people that come in and say, oh, let me buy that sword that they powered up over the last 2 weeks, and I'll pay $20 for it. And let me buy, now these are NFTs, which is the beauty of blockchain gaming. It's, it's just the traditional business landscape for gaming with grinders and whales and, and mid-market, but it all lives in a much more seamless, frictionless, open, transparent marketplace on blockchain, as opposed to in the, the walled garden of a single marketplace that a game runs.
And of course, that sort of flow has always been happening in the big MMORPGs, from places where time is cheap to uptime is expensive, but it just happens in the grey markets. So you can't, I always kind of think when people get complaining about blockchain and NFTs and all that sort of stuff, and maybe in the space we sort of over egg sometimes all the sort of the benefits it can bring, just in terms of it can solve these problems that have bedeviled online games for the last 25 years, in the sense of all this grey market trading. That can just put that on a open basis. I mean, that seems to be
and
a
you
pretty big
still get
advantage.
capture your royalties, right? As the publisher game company, right? You don't need to have. You can have a 100x larger storefront without losing any sort of upside.
So you mentioned so you compared Scale to something like a Polkadot and Cosmos, in terms of it being this sort of you're very modular, and as far as I can understand it, you have these sort of chains running, and if people want more performance, they just add more chains. So that seems like a to me, my brain, is a fairly straightforward approach. Why do you think you're sort of succeeding with stuff like Polkadot in particular, which is a very big sort of project? You don't see a lot of stuff on Polkadot. Is that just because their chains are more expensive and you sort of reduce this friction by making it very cheap? Is it a cost thing, or is?
So I would say we're Scale first and foremost. We're part of the Ethereum community. We love Ethereum. We're at every Ethereum hackathon from sponsoring from 2018 through all of 2022, and now we've shifted in more gaming focused events and Web3 focused events, social side like application, but less. But we love Ethereum. We support Ethereum. There's a rev share. Like when you use Scale, about 15% of the fees Ethereum ends up collecting over time when you look at like all the gas fees needed to run Scale and operate Scale. And so, and if you're building, guess what? You're building on EVM, but you're also building in this like natively connected ecosystem to Ethereum. And that actually matters for developers. And so, hey, maybe there's a couple EVM chains on Polkadot, but it's really tough because you're kind of outside of the family or the community of Ethereum. And we're really a part of that. And I think it's been helpful for us. And we also try to contribute and add back. And, so one, it's like people talk about like VCR and Betamax, and Betamax was a better technology, but VCR won. Well, it's not like specific chains are VCR and Betamax. It's specific smart contract frameworks, and it's EVM. EVM is the winner. And then I think a big piece of that is how closely can how good can you make your EVM? And Scale, most people just fork Geth and it's the same thing. We have this really fast C++ Ethereum, but we also have this native connection to Ethereum that is a big differentiator across the board. And it's just tough if you're not in an Ethereum ecosystem. You've got to really, really build an ecosystem. And optically, I think it seemed like people were doing that well during the bull market, but now during this market, if you kind of go, peel the onion back a little bit, you'll see the actions all in the Ethereum world.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay, so to finish up, I mean, everyone likes to hear predictions, and probably no one likes to make predictions because it's a bit of a mug's game. But as someone who's running, a blockchain and talking to devs and seeing your view of the industry, how do you see the next sort of year going? I mean, obviously we think blockchain is a very long-term technology, and we can't predict exactly when these things are going to take off. But what's your sort of best guess on how we see the next sort of six months and 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think if people who knock on blockchain gaming or Web3 products or Web3 as an application environment, a lot of their critique is correct, but not for where we are now. It's correct for a prior version of the world. And I think we're about to just keep seeing these amazing breakouts, and just lots of users. And I think we're gonna quietly get to that point during the bear market where people are like, wow, like there's 20 million people a day using blockchain applications compared to 10,000 a day probably back in 2018. And then, even a year ago, so my prediction, I made some predictions a while ago, but I was saying there'd be, an application with 1 million active users, and there'd be over 10 million active users across, the top applications. And that's actually happening now. And, I think I was a year late on that one. But I think the next 6 months are going to be, I think there's, and hey, who knows what's going to happen with the global macro? Because I do think some of the superpowers of blockchain are the fact that you can bootstrap network effects. People are like, oh, like I want to be one of the first people to have this NFT or this token. And then other people start playing because then the community's there and the value's there and the marketplace is there. So I do think there'll be a little chicken and egg, but I will tell you, internally, if you go talk to any core team, everyone's like trying to get in position. It's almost like F1. It's like everyone, the race is going to start in Q1 of next year or Q2. And you've got to go really fast now so you have a good, start position when the race starts. So everyone's hustling. And, I think hopefully this time it'll be really driven by fundamentals and traction, which is more sustainable and less volatile. And, and we have less bad actors, like we all know who in this next phase.
Yeah. No, I think it's sort of I'd echo that. And it's definitely the case now that we sort of have the foundational ecosystem to actually sort of support mass market product, mass market adoption, when it comes, and the products of that stage now, I think where increasingly at some point something does take off and is going to scale and not have, I guess we had Axie Infinity, which didn't work for various other reasons, but we sort of, the one thing I think blockchain sector is very good at is always building and always learning, and it's sort of a little bit, at some point that's gonna, you can't go wrong. If that's your attitude, you can't go wrong.
Hey, one thing I will say is I think we are going to have a downloadable game that has blockchain backend be I'll say top 10 downloadable PC gamer game in the next 6 months. And the reason why is right now that community really dislikes blockchain, a lot of those heavy game players. But the first winner who does this really well, who kind of gets into that market, these people also they like to win, they like to be on leaderboards. But you know what? If you can win and make money, all of a sudden you're at home, pretty good gamer gets to be an esports player. You don't just need to get paid only if you're at the top echelon. And you're going to be able to get liquidity and like value by playing every day. And if you're good, you're going to want to do it. And when you're good, guess what? You have a bunch of Twitch followers. You have a bunch of, you want to get more people there. And so these people that are fighting it are going to start playing some of these games and say, whoa, this is good. And if I'm one of the early people to shift over, I can accrue a lot of value. And then, there's probably just going to be 2, 3, 4 of these that everyone centers around. And then there's going to be like 100 copycats that won't do well. But I think we're going to have in the next 6 months, you're going to see like a couple of those, and it's going to start cracking some of this like, big wall that the gaming companies have up right now.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot about as you sort of point out, the education around what people thought NFTs were and what blockchain, what they thought it was to what it actually even was then, but certainly what it is now.
Yeah, like Stray Shot, for example, our one of my colleagues, his son's like 23 or 24, and he's got a bunch of buddies. They're all gaming together, and they've got all live in a place in San Francisco, and they start playing Stray Shot because they're like. Because his dad asked him to like, hey, can you and your friends play this? And they're downloading games and playing, and then they're like, we actually really like this game. It's fun, and oh my god, look, we're gonna look at all the currency we're winning, and and are these gonna be worth something? And so it's like you see that kind of happen, and the open beta just launched, I think, last weekend, so anybody can go play it now. And it's like I see things like that. I'm like, yep, that's there's good things in the near horizon for blockchain.
Good. And on that positive note,
okay.
Thank you very much for your time and dealing with my dodgy internet. So, thanks, Jack.
Hey, John, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Good. And thanks to you for watching, listening to the podcast. Hope you are consuming it. Every episode, we're talking to the people who are helping building out this new way of playing games, building communities, all this fantastic stuff. Hope you are enjoying it. Please subscribe and come back next time. See you then. Bye-bye.